Earlier this week, I was, chatting online with a buddy of mine, and we got onto one of my favorite subjects, which is time travel. And, so we were just kind of musing back and forth about answering the question, okay, if you could take all the knowledge you have now and infuse yourself into, back in time, your 18-year-old self. There you are, 18, maybe you've already graduated high school or you're just about to, but you're about to become autonomous. So there you are, 18. And now, it's not that there's two of you, it's that somehow you managed to go back in time and everything you know now is now downloaded, if you will, into your 18-year-old self. And so all of a sudden, there you are, 18, with your whole life ahead of you, and now you get to redo all the decisions, all the big life decisions, maybe change things. Would you do everything exactly the same? I said there was massive changes I would make. And his view was, well, I'd kind of want to do everything sort of the same because it made me who I am today. To me, it's an opportunity to improve, to become more efficient. So my thoughts were, well, if I was to go back and do this, number one, all my focus would be completely different than it was back then. Certain things would stay the same, like to me, theology, spirituality has always been a high priority quest of mine. I want to know what's real, not just what looks real. And so I would continue my studies and focus on that, make time for it, ask people questions. Sadly, I have a lot of questions that literally nobody on the planet can seem to answer, but not even ChatGPT. I've tried. So anyways, I would stick with that. But at 19, as many of you know, at 19, I got married, and that, of course, set my entire life on a trajectory. There's a lot of changes I would make, and one of the focuses I would make as my main focus would be to invest. Now I understand, after years of study and practice, starting around 1999, I got into investing, and I see the value in it now. I wish I had done that when I was 18. And even if I didn't remember every chart, imagine the possibilities. It's like, okay, in a couple of years, Google's going to become, they're going to have their IPO and they're going to become publicly available. Get some Google, get some Amazon. Wouldn't take much, get some Bitcoin. Man, imagine the wealth you would have. Even if you were just working a minimum wage job and just plunking down some money into those three. So that's one thing I would do, which the money would then open up new opportunities. Opportunities to start businesses or to be an angel investor, to be a philanthropist. It would just open up so many avenues. So, and I still believe you can do those things just on a much smaller scale. It takes money to do these kind of projects. The other thing is looking at my way that I live life on a daily basis. I would do it more like how I do it now. A bit more emphasis on today, living in the present. I believe it was Lao Tzu who said, if you focus your life looking back at the past, then your life will be one of sorrow. If you focus your life every day looking at the future, then your life will be full of worry. The best place to be is in the present. Now, all that being said, I do believe that looking at the past, the value that the past has, we call it experience. We have all made bad decisions, big ones, little ones, and the best thing we can extract from the past are the lessons learned. It's like that old thing, if you stick your hand in fire and you realize quickly fire burn, you don't do it again, hopefully. So to me, I struggle with, unfortunately, I have a very good memory. It's helped me a lot academically, but I clearly remember, and I've tested myself against my mom. I remember when I was 4 years old, and I could remember days. I remembered what the apartment looked like. I remembered what was down the sidewalk and around the corner. the store that was there. I remember specific days. We took a walk. I was 4 years old, and we went like down the block around the corner. There was a 7-Eleven. They sold Dunkin' Yo-Yos. Yeah, I believe that's what it was. In fact, they got me a wooden one on a different day. But on this particular day, we walked down the street, and it was me, my mom, my dad, and then she was carrying my little brother, who was only 1 year old. And we went down there, and on the street corner there in the parking lot of the 7-Eleven, there was a guy, who he was dressed like a magician, and his wife was there dressed like an Easter bunny, and she was very attractive, slender. I mean, you can imagine. She was very attractive. So anyway, so we walked into the parking lot, and of course, my dad was like, "Oh, let's get some pictures," So me and my brother stood in front of the magician, and then stood in front of the lady dressed like the White Rabbit. And in that whole process, I remember picking up on the fact that my mom was not too happy with this whole situation, because she could tell my dad was like really attracted to this woman in the sexy white bunny suit. Anyways, so, I later asked her about it. I go, "Did that day ever happen, or is that my imagination?" She goes, "How in the world do you remember that?" And I was 4 years old. So, like I said, it's been a two-edged sword. It's helped me academically. I can remember things very clearly. Some things I can't remember. Like if somebody asked me, "What'd you have for breakfast 2 days ago?" Or "Which shirt did you wear?" In fact, before I put on this shirt for the video, I had to look at my other videos, like, what shirt did I wear? I don't want to wear the same shirt twice in a row. So some stuff literally just does not land in my brain. I have to look it up, something like that. But, if it's trivia, if it's something I'm interested in, something about science, something about biology, something about whatever, it's always stuck in my head. I don't have a photographic memory, but it's pretty darn sticky. It remembers a lot of stuff. So all that to say that the past, when you can recall the past, everything, the smells, how you felt, pain, joy, it can do a number on you, And so I find myself trying to walk a balance where whenever I think about the past, I try to remember what lessons did I learn from the past. Because there's a lot of other stuff back there in the warehouses of archive in my head. It's like, I don't want to remember that, And so looking at the future is for me like one way of getting my mind off the past. So when it comes to looking at the future, my thoughts are, okay, what kind of plans am I going to make? Where do I want to be 5 years from now? Where do I want to be 10 years from now? And I don't mean what country. I mean, where do I want to be in my mindset? Where do I want to be in my emotional stance? Where do I want to be in my relationship with my wife? Where do I want to be financially? Who are my closest friends going to be? These are the kind of things that I think about when I think about the future. I'm kind of fortunate that when I think of the future, I really don't, and most of my life, when I think of the future, I don't really think of catastrophe or like things are going to go bad or, my mindset has always been kind of like that one episode of Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry says, I don't know, things just always kind of work out for me, and it's like he lost $10 in one place and then he found $10 in his coat pocket. He goes, see, it always just sort of evens out. And for me, that's been my life. It's like bad things have happened and then it always kind of worked out. Not because I was smart or anything or fixed it. Things just kind of worked out. So I don't have any stress about the future. And I think about it, it's like, well, what if I got cancer? What if I died? What if this? What if that? Doesn't faze me. Really, to me, everything I've been living after like age 20 has been gravy. I just kind of figured when I was 18, I'd be dead by the time I was 21 max. So everything all these years has been extra. So the idea that I would be dead next week or next month or next year, it's more my concern is for the hole that I would leave in other people's lives, for my wife and my kids, my mom, things like that. But as far as me, I look at my time here that I have left, whatever that is. I doubt that it's going to be another 50 years unless there's some breakthrough in science or something. But I look at the rest of my time here kind of like being in a waiting room. It's like so many of the questions I have, they're just, I've tried for, coming up on 63 years. I've tried finding the answers, and they simply are not here. I'm going to have to get them on the other side. So to me, it's kind of like more of a transition. It's more like it's kind of like trying to remember before you were born. We can't remember that. We don't. Our neural pathways weren't even developed yet. So how can we remember something before we were born? And that brings in a whole existential theological discussion on, did we exist before we were born? I believe we did. Not in the form that we are in now. But again, that's a whole other conversation. But just as it's impossible to fathom who and where we were before we were born, to the same degree, there is information and questions that can only be answered on the other side, and to me, it's like, okay, well, that's a big plus to me, because I have a very curious mind. I'm like, okay, well, when I die, I will be liberated from the limitations I have now, and hopefully get the answers that I've been looking for literally my entire life, So now that brings me to the present and this whole idea of time travel and stuff. Back in 2009, I was already writing a blog. I'll give you a link to it if you want to flip through it. I just kept it online just for the heck of it. Every day, pretty much, sometimes twice a day, I would write an article, much like how I do vlogging. Back then, I wasn't into video or none of that. This was 2009. So there's an archive of a lot of my writings. There's quite a few of them, and those are just the ones I left online. Some of them were kind of dated. I'll give you a link to my blog page that I started in 2009. But the article that I wrote back then was called Practical Time Travel. And you can read the article, it's more detailed, but the gist of it is we can't go back to when we were 18. We can't do that. It's a nice, fanciful idea, but we can't do it. But what can we do? Can we time travel? Well, kind of, sort of. I found a loophole. And it is to imagine for a moment, just empty your mind of all other limitations for a second, and imagine that today, right now, you are 20 years older than your current age. So if you're 63 today, imagine right now you're 83 years old. If you're 50, imagine that you're 70. You get the idea. And just kind of let your mind settle into that. Like say for me, I'm about to turn 63. So if I was to push my mental, construct forward by 20 years and take a few minutes and think, what would be my thought processes at 83? Because at 83, there's certain things you're just not going to do. You're not going to become an astronaut. You're not going to become president of the United States. There's a whole list of things you're not going to do at 83. You're probably not going to take up surfing. Not that some people haven't. I'm just saying there's a lot of things that you've decided you don't want to do. And there's a lot of things that maybe you do want to do. So if I was 83 years old right now, what would be my priorities? Being closer to my mortality, what would be my thoughts? And what would be the regrets I remember from the early part of my life? And give yourself 5 minutes to just let your mind imagine you're 20 years older. And then, and I've done this for years, ever since I wrote this article in 2009, and then you snap back to today. It's almost as if you came back from 20 years in the future. You see what I'm saying? And when I do that, I look at my mom, I look at my wife, I look at my kids, and it's like going back in time by coming back to today. Because today is always fleeting. Things are always changing. Everybody's always getting older. People get more busy. And so in 20 years, we're going to wish to ourselves, man, I wish I could go back to 2026. There's so many things I would have spent more time with the people in my life, or I would have spent more time being responsible with my health, responsible with my money, making that decision to live in the Philippines or not live in the Philippines, make the most of my life in my home country. Don't wait 20 years to say, I wish I woulda, shoulda, coulda. Don't do it. Let your mind go 20 years in the future and then bounce back to today. And you'll be amazed, like I was. You know what? I got to get my priorities right. I can't keep saying, well, I'm eventually going to visit the Philippines, or I'm eventually going to be a better husband, or be a better father, or be a better friend, or say this or say that. I wish I would have told them when they were still alive. Fix that. Look at today as if you time traveled back to today from 20 years in the future. So I'll put the article up where you can check it out. Like I said, I go into a little bit more detail there, but I just wanted to put that in front of you because it's so easy to procrastinate. It's so easy to assume we're going to live another 20 years. We don't know that. I mean, look at how many people, they never lived past being 6 years old. They ran out to get the ball that bounced out of the driveway and bam, they got hit by a car. That's it, done. 6 years old. No graduating high school, no getting married, none of that. They're done. There is no guarantee that you're going to be here 3 days from now. There just isn't. What is it? The phrase, tomorrow is promised to no man. I have an aunt, her and my uncle, they went to bed one night just like any other day. Totally normal day, no medical issues, no weird symptoms. And when my uncle woke up in the morning, she passed away at night. She had a brain aneurysm, like flipping a switch. She was done. She was gone. Just like that. I mentioned before, I have a buddy of mine. He would pick me up at the airport and met my mom, and we hung out, and we'd go out to dinner, and then he finally made the move to come out to the Philippines. He moved eventually to my island out here, towards Bohol. And 3 weeks ago, and he'd been living here for about a good 2 years, and then he hit a dog on his motorcycle, and that's it. He's done. It just happened like 3 weeks ago. So there is no guarantee. So it's just something to think about, to shake off that procrastination, to think, I'll become a better person tomorrow. No. We have the opportunity to make decisions today that tomorrow we'll be thankful that we did it. Improving our health, improving our financial situations, improving the relationships in our lives, focusing perhaps on the grander questions about spirituality and where do you fit in with all that. If you're going to live your path, start taking steps. So see you there in the comments. Be interested in your thoughts.